Well, hello and welcome to the Healthy Living Podcast brought to you by Willow Creek Springs. I'm Joe Grumbine and I will be your host today. And I have with me again Corina Ryan. And we're going to be talking about overcoming hardships and possibly getting into some uh, grieving information. Corina, welcome back. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you, Joe?
I am fantastic. As
Thanks
I
for
mentioned,
having me again.
oh, it's always my pleasure. It seems like it's been just a minute or so since we last talked.
Right? Funny how that works.
Exactly. Well, so today we're going to get into something that is probably everybody has in common, and it's going to be about overcoming hardships and grieving. And I don't know a single person who's been around for, more than 20 or 30 years that hasn't gone through a hardship for sure, and
Right.
grief as well. I would say for sure. The world is always moving. Things are coming and going in and out of our lives, and we're moving. And so, as you're walking down a road, almost always you trip on something, you didn't see something, you fall in a hole, whatever. There's something always happens, and then if you live a life that has love in it, the downside of love is that we're all temporary. And so whoever you are, people are going to come and go in your life, and whether it's an animal, a friend, a family member, a loved one of any kind, and when they do leave, even it's so funny. It doesn't matter. Like, there's been people in my life that I was close to, and then got distant from, and then whatever, something happens, you find out there's something wrong, and all of a sudden you're like, hey, wait a minute, I need to fix that. And sometimes those things happen. Then of course hardships, my God, they come in all shapes and sizes.
Yep. Sometimes
So
it rains, sometimes it floods.
exactly. So tell me about your thoughts.
Well, it's such a broad topic. I'll start with in the last 8 years, I've lost many people,
Hmm.
and four of them being my parents.
Right.
And
That's a
this
lot.
last year I lost my father, Tom, and a very close friend within a week after. And grief comes in waves, and I try, when those times come, I just try to reflect on the moments that I had with that person, try to celebrate those times together, to try to help the sorrow that I'm feeling at the time, you know, and
So when you
it's,
talk about, grief comes in waves, I know I've lost a lot of people myself, but even just to express that feeling, like, I mean, it's like it it's such a powerful feeling, because feelings are this weird thing, right? I mean, some feelings happen because of a physical experience where you burn yourself or you press on a nerve or whatever. But the most powerful feelings, I think, are the ones that start on the inside. And again, it's I don't know how to describe it. I mean, I know how I feel when I'm sad, but I mean, sometimes just like looking into that to say, well, what is it,
right. To me, it's a sorrow that is just real deep, and like I said, it'll just show up at any time. I mean, my mom passed away 8 or 9 years ago, and it still feels as fresh as the day she passed.
Right.
And when you're going through that, it's easy to go down a rabbit hole. And I do whatever I can to, I grab onto sticks and whatever I have to not allow myself to go down that rabbit hole. I'll say a quick prayer, or, like I said, I'll reflect on some great memories and, good things. My father passed on my birthday.
Oh, wow. I'm
Yeah.
aware of that. I'm terrible about birthdays. I barely remember.
That's okay. It's okay. But to me, I know my father, and he would not want me to mourn him. He would
Right.
want me to celebrate. And I feel that it was, meant for that, so that I wouldn't. My father and I got really close while he was sick. And so death can be absolutely beautiful as well. It's, the way that our minds, we want to go towards those feelings, but those are the things that we've got to keep in check. And we all feel, but if we can get past how I feel and just do something about it, it helps to grow
Mhm.
and to progress in life.
Right. Well, you touched on something I think that's really important. And you had mentioned that your father Tom was also my very dear friend. And so in fact that's how we met. I met Tom before
Right.
I met you. And we saw it coming, which was I think a better thing than it happening suddenly because I've I've lost people both ways. And as
Yeah.
much as we think the sudden thing might be better because it's over so fast, for the person that goes, that's not what the problem is. Is
Exactly.
they're already graduated. They're already in
That's
the.
right.
This is all about the people that are left behind, and so I know people that, like I lost my grandfather suddenly, and I didn't get a chance to see him before he passed. And so
Mhm.
there's always that regret. And then, of course, I saw him in an open casket, which was the most horrible thing I've ever gone through. And I didn't know. I was a kid. I didn't know what to expect, and I wanted to see. And then so all of those things were just, very difficult for me. But then other people, I've been able to walk the journey with them and know it was coming. And as much as we say we're going to prepare, you can't. It's not possible to fully prepare. But what you can do is become close with the time you have. And I think that that's the part that carries us, when the time is hard. And the one thing I've noticed is that every feeling generally doesn't last very long unless you feed it. So whether it's
Exactly.
craving or a pain or a joy, whatever it is, like
Mhm.
if you keep dwelling on it and feeding it, you can work yourself into a frenzy and feel more and more, like you said, go fall down a rabbit hole and get into a depression or whatever. But
Mhm.
if you can switch it in your mind into an action or something else to, like you said, well, he wouldn't want me to be sad, he would want me to celebrate. Well, if you can mentally grab a hold of that reality just for enough of a second, it can switch you around. And then instead of
Absolutely.
cascading into a deeper grief and a deeper depression, all of a sudden you find yourself doing something that maybe is even enjoyable. And then you can connect yourself to a purpose to say, well, my dad passed several years ago, and I think about sometimes, the tumultuous relationship we had over, the 50 some years we were both on the planet together. And there was good times and bad times, just like everything else. There was, 10 years we didn't really talk to each other. And but then I think about, how it all played out, and I think we got fairly close together towards the end. And I think to myself sometimes when I'm working on a project, I bet my dad would be proud of me right now. I bet he's looking down, smiling at me, going, "Yeah, keep going,
Mhm.
Joe." And
Yeah.
those are things that can be very empowering rather than just
Mhm.
and sometimes when you sit there and say to yourself, well, you know, I don't want to think about this person because it makes me sad. but the very
Mhm.
thing that could make you sad also might make you smile, or, maybe make you think, or who knows what.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree.
Is there a particular type of action, or like, when you're going through, when you see it coming, like, I think that over time, most of us, they say time heals all wounds. I think generally speaking, that's true to a point for most people. How you feel today about the loss of somebody is probably muted compared to how you felt, a week after it happened.
Right.
But it doesn't make it any less important or any less intense or anything. It just means it's probably a little more muted, because that's how feelings tend to be over time. Unless you're spending a lot of time connecting yourself to those feelings, a lot
Mhm.
of times they fade a little bit, and that's good. That's healthy. I mean, we were not put on this earth to be sad all the time.
No, no, we weren't. We were brought here to grow and to enjoy life and love each other.
Exactly, exactly. Now there's a point to, grieving, and I think as we get older, and both of us are probably pretty close to the same age bracket. I always say, well, when you're a kid, everybody's older than you, and everybody starts graduating, and then everybody gets married, and then everybody has kids, and then the kids grow up, and the kids graduate, and everybody has grandkids, and then they grow up, and then all of a sudden you start going to funerals, and
Yeah,
and then you're just like, what the heck? Like, I I can't remember
seeing old
how
friends, seeing
exactly.
old friends and going, oh, yeah, I guess
Yeah.
I'm getting a little older.
But there's a thing that happens, and I think it's important, and I think that maybe if we are to glean something, I think the process of how to grieve gracefully, or how to grieve positively, or how to grieve in a way that is less harmful than it could be, however you want to
Mhm.
frame it. But also,
Absolutely.
I think there's a counterpoint to it all, and I think that, one of the reasons that we suffer is so that we know what joy is. Because
Absolutely.
if you were always eating your favorite food, over time it would lose its appeal, right? Because
Sure.
no matter how great it is, you still are gonna like, oh, yeah, it's good. I mean, it gets less good if you get all you want. And even anything like
So
like
true.
an addiction, a drug, alcohol, um, you know, uh, even things like friendship, and people giving you attention. It's like, as long as there's a chance that you might not get it, it becomes very valuable. And if you don't know loneliness, being popular probably doesn't mean as much as if you ever have known loneliness. And the same thing I think holds true with grief. I went a long time before I lost anybody, and I think I was into my 20s before really anybody that I knew or was close to had passed away. And I watched people suffer, and I didn't understand it.
Right.
And, I was like, oh, well, you'll be okay, because I never felt it. But
Yeah,
then the first person that I lost, and I felt it, and I was like, oh, wow. So we get a gift of empathy when we suffer. And I think that that's a very, very important gift. So,
it
like,
is.
whenever somebody goes through something, I think that that's sort of all of a sudden you now have something to offer, because you can tell somebody, hey, I've been there, I know what you're going through, or at least I've been through what you're going through. It might not be the same experience, but it's as close as it could be. And then
Right.
it puts you in a position where somebody can maybe lean on you, and there's a huge value to that. But maybe the other side of it is like, we go through life, um appreciating some things, and maybe not so much other things. And I think really the more we have, the less we appreciate. It's just, for some reason, it's our nature. Even if you remember to be grateful, it's harder when you have everything you need or everything you want. And I think that when you have these losses and you suffer these pains, another gift that it presents to you, whether we take it or not is up to us, of course, but the gift is given to us, I think, is that we can experience joy in a different way. So when you see a loved one and they're here to talk to you, instead of just going, oh, come back another time, I'm busy. Maybe
Right, right.
that moment to say, well, you're here right now. Let's spend a minute together. And
Sure.
I think that that's another thing that sometimes I don't know. It's not like it's easy to talk about when you're not suffering, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
But
a lot easier.
I think
But
sometimes,
I do, when I start to get to that place, I turn on some music, I start painting, whatever, is your gifts in life, whether it be horticultural like you have.
right? Yeah, I go to
Um,
the garden when I need any help.
yeah, so does my husband. And
Yeah.
I go to painting
Uh,
and I just, I can get lost in there and then the moment's gone,
exactly.
a moment's passed. But when the moment does come, I feel it. I allow myself to feel it, but not for a very long time.
I think that's good. One of the things I think too is, the gift of tears. I think that, I don't know what life would be like if we couldn't cry. Because
No
as,
release.
right, exactly. And it's a physical manifestation of letting go of that thing that is weighing you down and causing you pain. And with every tear that falls out of your eyes, it lets it out. It lets it be somewhere else. And I
Yeah.
think that that's, I know that it's funny. I never cried when I was younger. And but I came to a place probably somewhere in my 30s, I think, where, I was seeking to be a better person and seeking wisdom and seeking, just to be closer to God, all those things. And
Right.
I tears came easier and easier and easier. And now I'm a big old crybaby.
I know.
I'm just like, I don't give a damn anymore. It's like if I feel like crying, I'm gonna cry, and I'll get right in the middle of a conversation and I'll start welling up for no reason. I'm like, all right, well, something needed to get out, and
That's right.
but you always
Yeah.
feel better.
You
Like,
do. Joy comes.
yeah,
It is amazing after you've weathered the storm, it's like an abundance of peace and joy that, overflows us. And I like that. I look forward to that.
yeah. And I think, it's funny because sometimes like you see somebody crying and all you want to do is stop them. You want to take that away
For
from them.
one.
But you know what? Sometimes I think since I've experienced so much of, what I consider to be the joy of crying is, because you can have tears of joy too. I've experienced that too, where just walking down, all of a
Absolutely.
sudden something's beautiful and you're just like, whoa,
Yeah.
you know?
Right.
And the difference between those tears really isn't that much. You think to yourself that
Joy release.
feeling of just I'm filled up with this whatever, this feeling, and it has to come out. And that's like your just expression to let it out, right? But the
You're
difference
right.
between the feeling of joy and the feeling of pain is not that different in my
No.
experience. And so sometimes maybe while you're going through the throes of that, to connect yourself to one of those positive moments, and just like, your dad or your mom, saying, don't forget to breathe, or some little thing that
Right.
that they're probably doing up there, right?
That was my dad's last word the day before. He said, breath, not breathe, but breath.
I
And
no doubt.
the whole time we were taking care of him, we're rushing around, trying to
Right.
get things done. And he's like, no hurry. Don't
Yeah.
forget to breathe.
Yeah. 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 Your dad had a lot of wisdom. You know, the one thing about people that have a lot of wisdom is they tend to make a lot of mistakes in life too. And that's where
Yeah,
you get the wisdom from. That's the
right,
problem with wisdom is it always comes at the expense of a lot of life lessons. It doesn't, you can't get it out of a book. You can't get it out of watching movies. You have to actually go through those things. And your dad
yeah,
had a lot of wisdom because of all the things he did, good and bad, sideways, whatever.
right,
And
right,
but the good thing about it was he took his life experiences and did something good with them. He was always there to help people. The what he showed people from it, regardless of what he had been through in the past, were good lessons and gave his wisdom freely and you know, never could you have a better friend than him. I mean, I've watched him, you know, go to bat for so many good people, whether they were good to him or not. He was always he always did what Christ told us to do. You know,
right. To love
he
one
said,
another and to
love,
be
love,
there.
love your neighbor.
And
Yeah, that was it. Pretty
that's
simple.
right.
It's easy to
Yeah.
say. Not so easy to do all the time, but that was one of
Yeah.
the things, you know, if there was a lesson that he left, I think that would be certainly one of them. Um, you know, I think this is a great discussion. I mean, I got tears welling up in my eyes talking about it too, and but they're not,
Right.
I don't feel that they're so much grief tears. They're just tears. Like they don't have a specific calling, you know, they're just saying, feeling a lot of stuff right now. Well, let's go ahead and let it out.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. That's
Yeah,
good. And you're gonna have, I think you're gonna have a great day now.
I think so too. I think you are too. And
Thank you.
when we talk about overcoming things, I think that is there a, you know, you've been through a lot in your life, you know, and I know a lot of things that you've been through that hopefully as we continue these conversations we'll delve into. But regardless of all the the obstacles and the issues that we face, you know, they come in different forms, whether they're a physical obstacle, like, you know, I hurt myself, I can't move, or I'm in pain, or maybe I'm dealing with a struggle of a craving of something or whatever, or maybe it's a health issue of another type, or maybe it's a personal relationship issue or a you know, a spiritual battle you're going through, whatever it is, but an
We're
obstacle,
all of the above.
all of the above at all the time. Yeah, I think that we're all going through it
It seems
all.
like that these days. It just seems like it's really thick with troubles in life for
I could
everybody.
I couldn't agree more. So what would your thought, like if you had something to say that would say, like, somebody comes up to you, you see them struggling, right? Maybe it's a kid,
Mhm.
or maybe it's an older person or whoever. You're walking down the road and you look at somebody and they're you can just tell that they're struggling. And you're sitting down at a bench with them eating a sandwich and they're eating a sandwich and they're just looking up to you and you just know that they want you to tell them something, you know, what would you say?
I would say, you're awesome. And usually people will smile because they're not told how awesome and how wonderful they are. And and also, if there's tears, let them cry, you know, let them give them just a little time because like you said, we're all going through it and we should be all in it together. So, we have to have that compassion and empathy for one another. And whatever that person needs to talk about, I would sit there as long as, my time permitted, I would be there and I would give 110 whatever God wants me to speak through. He speaks through me and hopefully
Absolutely.
usually it makes their day. You can see the lightness in their shoulders and their eyes and yeah, when we're in trouble, the best thing to do is to go take care of another
It's so
because
true. It's so
gets
true.
your
It's like the secret that I always tell people about volunteering and getting involved in any of the nonprofits I'm connected with. I always say, well, it's easy to ask for help, right? Because that's what most people come to us. But I always say, the ones that really win are the ones that actually get in and help. And then they always come back to me and say, oh my God, that felt so good. Like I feel so
Yeah,
blessed.
the experience and the growth that happens.
Right, right. And I think that maybe is a good little tidbit there. Like when you're grieving or if you're hurting or if you're going through an obstacle, sometimes find somebody else to help out. And the thing that's kind of interesting for me, I've always said, well, this will pass. Whatever the problem is, like we live in a world that's moving around at 10,000 miles an hour, you know,
Yeah.
even if we're sitting still, the planet's moving at 10,000 miles an hour. So we're moving that fast, and then we're hurling through space, and everything's okay. Like, how could that even be, right?
I
If
don't
you
know.
look at the,
I don't
the
know.
the mechanics of what's actually happening and how violent it is out in space, and that we're flying through this giant universe and nothing's happening to us, just that alone, you would think that every second something horrible is going to happen, but it doesn't.
It
And
doesn't, right.
and no matter how bad it is, if you just write it out and just sit there and say, okay, give it a minute, it'll be better or it'll be different. And so that to me is one little piece about it. But the other part about it is no matter how bad it is for you today, you're always
Mhm.
somewhere in the middle. There's always somebody that's got it way worse than you, and there's always
Mhm.
somebody that's got it way better than you. And that's another thing that has always been helpful to me. It's like, well, I'm really feeling this, but at least it's not that. And
Right.
sometimes
U-
that,
Usually I run into somebody when I'm, down that rabbit hole a little ways, and something will come along and then it'll be, wow,
yeah,
my life is not that
got it
bad.
pretty good. Yeah. And I think that ultimately becomes one of the big, I don't know, sort of a key to getting through is just remembering gratitude because the gratitude is a powerful, powerful tool for us. And it's
Mhm.
funny because the miserable people in life are not grateful for anything. And the happy
That's
people in life are
true.
generally grateful for everything. And it doesn't mean one has more than the other. It just means they're looking at what they have instead of what they don't. And so
Right. Right.
sometimes, you know, the fact that I hurt means I had something wonderful. Because all the people that died, I didn't know. I don't feel anything for them. I mean, it's just me. Maybe other people do, but I don't feel pain for the person that died that I never met. I don't feel anything. I never met them.
Right.
And
Right.
the only people that I feel pain for are the people that I had the privilege to spend some time with and I had the privilege to share my love with. So
Right.
sometimes even that, can bring you back to a good little spot.
Yes. Very true.
Karina, I think this has been a wonderful conversation. And, sometimes I like talking about happy things a lot, but sometimes talking about things that aren't happy are equally as important. And I want to tell you that you're awesome.
You. So are you.
I know we both are awesome, but it's true and it's important to think about it, and even to say that to yourself, it's not arrogant, it's just being loving. And I think it's important to remember to we're supposed to love each other, but also we're supposed to love our neighbor as ourself. And if we don't love ourselves, then we
How can
can't
we love our
love our
neighbors?
neighbor very well. So I think
Very
that's
true.
super important. All right, Corinne.
Right.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. I look forward to
Thank
further
you.
discussions, and I certainly am looking forward to coming up and seeing you in March when we have the celebration of life.
Celebration.
And that'll give me enough time to get my stuff together to get up there and see you guys. And
Yeah, that'd be great.
definitely looking forward to that. And so, well, everybody, this has been another edition of the Healthy Living Podcast brought to you by Willow Creek Springs. And thank you so much, Karina. And we will see you guys all next time.
Bye bye.